You know that feeling you get with an old car? The engine's making some new weird noise, another repair bill is probably on its way, and you start to wonder, is it finally time to just buy a new one? Well, in the world of industry, that same question isn't just a personal headache. It can be a multi-million-dollar decision. And to solve it, you need a framework that pits the old against the new in a straight-up battle for economic survival.
So the real question we're asking isn't just about when a machine is going to physically fall apart. It's not a matter of if it will fail, but when it stops being profitable to keep it running. It's a question of pure economic optimization. To get to the bottom of this, engineers and economists use a really powerful framework. They basically set up a head-to-head battle. So let's meet our two contenders. On one side, we have the defender. That's the existing piece of equipment, the old reliable machine that's been doing the job for years. And on the other side, we have the challenger, the best new technology out there promising to be way more efficient and perform better. Okay, so the defender, it has some salvage value you could cash in on, but its operating and maintenance costs just keep climbing. The challenger, on the other hand, needs a big chunk of cash up front, but it promises to be cheaper to run in the long haul. Now, the crucial point here is that loyalty to old equipment has absolutely no place in this decision. This is a cold, hard calculation about one thing and one thing only: maximizing future wealth. But to make a truly rational choice, we have to learn to think like an economist. And that means we need to learn how to spot and completely ignore the single biggest psychological trap in all of decision-making. And that trap is called the sunk cost. This is all the money you've already poured into the Defender. The original purchase price, that huge repair bill from last year, it's gone. It feels painful, I know, and our brains desperately want to make that past investment feel worth it. But in the world of economics, that money is completely and totally irrelevant to what you should do next. Let's be crystal clear on this. The second that money is spent, it vanishes from the equation for all future decisions. If you cling to it, it's only going to cloud your judgment.
So how do you actually escape this trap? Well, you use a clever mental trick called the outsider viewpoint. Imagine for a second you don't own the Defender at all. Now ask yourself this: would you walk into your own factory today and buy that exact machine for what it's currently worth on the market? If the answer is no, then keeping it is basically the same as making a bad investment right this second. It's a simple little mental flip, but it forces you to see the situation with perfect clarity.
Okay, so we've gotten our heads on straight, we've sidestepped the psychological trap, now it's time for the math. The one metric that cuts through all the noise and gives us the actual answer. This graph right here holds the key. Let's break it down. First, look at the blue capital recovery line. You can think of this as the initial price of the machine, just spread out over its lifetime. The longer you own it, the lower that cost per year gets. Makes sense, right? But now look at the dark blue line, the annual operating costs. As the machine gets older, things break, so maintenance and repairs go up. The orange line simply adds those two costs together. And that little sweet spot at the very bottom of the U-shape, that's it. That's the economic service life. It's the perfect number of years where your total cost is at its absolute rock bottom.
And here it is, maybe the single most important takeaway from this whole first half. Just because a machine can still run doesn't mean it should. Its most profitable, most cost-effective life is almost always much shorter than its physical one. So, the economic analysis is done. The spreadsheet has given us a clear verdict: replace the Defender. But that answer is based on a promise. The promise that this new challenger will actually be as efficient as advertised. And that promise isn't fulfilled on a balance sheet. It's fulfilled in a lab. That's right. The challenger, in this case, happens to be a new biomass energy system. And its promised efficiency isn't just some number on a page. It has to be created, tested, and perfected. We're officially leaving the world of finance and entering the world of materials science. Welcome to the lab. The very first step is something called proximate analysis. Scientists take potential fuels, like palm shawl waste, and they systematically cook them to break them down into their most basic parts. They measure things like moisture, ash, and most importantly, volatile matter, because that's the stuff that actually turns into energy. For even more precision, they use this machine, a thermogravimetric analyzer, or TGA. It's basically a hyper-accurate furnace and a hyper-accurate scale all rolled into one. By heating a tiny little sample and measuring every single milligram of weight it loses, scientists can create a super precise profile of how a fuel burns and exactly when it releases its energy. Okay, so now that we have the tools, the goal is to find the perfect fuel recipe for our new challenger. It's not just about using one type of biomass, it's about creating the most efficient blend we possibly can.
The goal here is simple. You want to maximize the volatile matter to get the most energy, and you want to minimize the ash content, which is just useless waste that gums up the works. Pure palm shell waste? That's a great start. Tons of energy, very little ash. But look what happens when we create a blend with 40% coal. The energy content, the volatile matter, stays really high, well over 50%, while the ash is still super low. That looks like a very promising recipe. This TGA curve is like a visual story of the fuel burning. As the temperature on the bottom axis goes up, the weight of the fuel on the side axes goes down. See that really steep drop in the middle? That's the sweet spot. That's the main decomposition event where the fuel is rapidly releasing its energy. The steeper that drop, the faster the energy is coming out.
So, putting it all together, the scientists have a really clear checklist for the perfect fuel. Does it have a lot of energy-rich volatile content? Check. Is it nice and dry to avoid wasting energy? Check. Does it burn clean with low ash? Check. And are the particles small and uniform enough to burn efficiently? Check.
And after all the analysis, all the testing, the science gives us a clear answer. A 40% blend of coal with the palm shell waste is the perfect mix. It hits that sweet spot that requires the least amount of energy to kickstart the whole reaction, making the Challenger just as efficient and cost-effective as the spreadsheet predicted it could be.
This whole process, from the boardroom to the lab, brings up a powerful final question. From deciding on a new power source to figuring out global logistics, how many of the world's most complex problems can only be solved when